time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Disappointment, being upset, you got to move on. End of the day. So that's what I felt today with our guys and our staff. When you turn the tape on Louisiana Tech, you better move on quick. They got a good football team.
Their mindset is you're going to have to beat them. They don't usually ever beat themselves. You've got to win the physical matchup because they're going to force the issue. If you don't have the right mindset going into it, they're going to expose you.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome in Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Talking Tuesday. Looking ahead to this weekend's football games, looking back at what happened this past weekend, I did not realize until I started, doing some more reading because I wasn't there Saturday. But doing some more reading and following everybody's thoughts and then being there today for the Must Chat press conference and then seeing the letter of apology from Ray Tanner. What a complete and total disaster Saturday night was at South Carolina. Let's name.
Okay.
The football game aside, and of course that was the icing on a very sour cake. Of course, you had the unfortunate shooting. Now USC had nothing to do with this, but you had the unfortunate shooting in the Vista area that, of course, put everybody on edge. Then you get to the ball game. I hear the traffic was hell.
Bad.
Getting to the stadium.
Very bad.
Unbelievable. It's not like this is the first time they've had a night football game at Williams-Brice.
Or a sold-out crowd, for that matter.
And then they had water issues furnishing the restrooms at the stadium, which caused a backup. And also, I think, added to the concession problems. Apparently, very long lines in the concession areas. And on top of that,
I just found that it was very easy that Kentucky was able to flush anything South Carolina wanted to do.
Boom, boom. And then the flamethrowers weren't working. Only one was. They didn't
turn on the propane tanks.
And then apparently the guys who, for whatever reason, they didn't shake hands at the coin toss.
Yeah, that was dumb. That was dumb.
Sportsmanship deal. You got all that going on, and then you go and play the football game, and you lay a rotten egg, not just an egg that had been rotten for about a week. Man, what a bad, bad Saturday. Now, look, it's the first home game. The season's 3 weeks old. A lot of teams already had their first home games. This was USC's first home games. You're going to have some snafus the first game of the season.
But they had them all occur in the same day.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
And a lot of those things,
for their sake,
a lot of those things would have been forgotten or forgiven
had
they not played the way that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. Those things get magnified. And then, oh, by the way, you go and you play the game that you did. And even after the start they had to start the game, I think so much of that night was a letdown, and you could almost feel it bubbling over for the first couple of weeks and say, you know what, if they don't ever cash in on turnovers, they'd be in trouble. Or if they never able to fully establish a run, they'd be in trouble. Or if they never necessarily were able to stop people on third down, they'd be in trouble. All those things came home to roost in one particular weekend, in addition to some of the ancillary stuff you just mentioned.
Home to roost in the Cockpit. They used to call that place the Cockpit.
I'm there.
Back in the good old days, it was known as the Cockpit.
Is it really?
Yeah. That's what everybody who grew up in the state of South Carolina, who followed South Carolina football, that's what it was called, the Cockpit. And
I'm
then
getting it now, yeah.
And then, of course, as time moved on and new people became in charge of things over there, they kind of phased that out for politically correct reasons. I still think the one thing that now maybe they don't want to put a nickname on it because the Williams and Brice families gave so much money to the stadium. Maybe they don't want it known, by anything other than Williams-Brice Stadium, which is fine. But if you are truly trying to be cool in college football, you need a nickname for your stadium that people can relate to and recruits can relate to. I mean, listen, how many recruits know of Clemson's Memorial Stadium? Not a single one.
They know it's Death Valley.
Or LSU, Death Valley. Or the Swamp. When you say the Swamp,
it's Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. But it's the Swamp.
No, it's the Swamp.
But it's the Swamp.
Who knows it's Ben Hill Griffin Stadium? Who else has catchy nicknames in college football?
The Big House.
The Big House.
The Horseshoe.
The Horseshoe. Right.
Notre Dame Stadium doesn't really have a nickname, but they have Touchdown Jesus.
Yeah. So anyway, I think a cool nickname is nice. And the Cockpit was a cool nickname. for South Carolina, but they did away with it.
Camp Randall.
I have campaigned vociferously over the years about the return of the name the Cockpit to that stadium, but it has fallen on deaf ears.
Much like many of your complaints over the years.
Not complaints, recommendations.
Okay.
Recommendations. So I was over at USC today. We'll hear from Will Muschamp. Zach Bailey is out. He's got a high ankle sprain. You know, he said maybe a week. They'll reevaluate him next week.
Those are hard to get back from.
Exactly. For a big guy coming off a high ankle sprain, who knows how long that can be. You know, Donnell Stanley last year got hurt on the first play of the season against Vanderbilt, and they called it a high ankle sprain. He didn't play again. Yeah, and he was in a boot after the game too, and we saw him on crutches. And so, you know, anytime they try to put that boot on them to try and mobilize that, you know that it's something severe. And he wasn't sure about the status on Saturday night. And again, as we hear on Tuesday, the status clarified. That's not a 1 week injury. That might be a after the bye week, maybe type injury. And of course, Debo Samuel released from the hospital today in good spirits. And again, no timetable on his return. And outside of that, no other injury issues to deal with coming out of the Kentucky game, just a lot of hurt and bruised feelings. Muschamp doesn't want to hear anything from his players about not being focused. Several players talked about not having their focus, which is hard to believe for your first home game, and you're 2-0 and there's 82,000 and you got flamethrowers and a DJ and everything else to get you focused. And they said that they weren't focused. Right. That was another thing, by the way, going back to the list of issues. Apparently there were sound issues with the DJ, and so all this is going to be addressed and fixed. But back to the team. They said several of the players talked about just not having their focus, and you know, Muschamp is right. He's like, come on, focus. You came out and scored on the first play of the game. Right. First series defensively, you came up with a turnover. You just didn't execute. That's what he was harping on today. You just didn't execute. As far as the running game goes, he's not giving up on his running backs. He still likes the running backs, thinks that they can run the football, had more run plays called than actually took place because Bentley's got that option to throw the football in those situations. And he said, like, the first play of the game was actually an RPO, and he saw pass when they, as he put it, when the run box looks full, Bentley's going to throw the football. Exactly. And that's what he looks at in that situation. It's a numbers game. And so for people who are complaining, he said, he didn't say it like this, but what his message was, for those of you complaining about the lack of rushing attempts, well, running plays were called, but in this, as he put it, this RPO world that they're in now, a lot of running plays turn into pass plays. You were up at Clemson. I was. Dabo talked for 41 minutes, which was I'm told brief, according to the way that works. But the one thing that I found very interesting is how much he tries to keep this group motivated by not believing their own hype. He called the defensive performance against Louisville, which they had been lauded for by many people who have been seeing this team for the first time. He called it the worst defensive performance that they had all year. Now, you factor in the fact that they played Kent State in the opening game and only allowed 3 points. They played Auburn last week and allowed only 2 weeks before that and had 6 points. They had not allowed a touchdown before Louisville. But the fact of the matter is, we're all looking at that performance and saying, against that offense, that's an amazing performance, but that's not the way that they look at it. And I think that's at least a testament to the fact that they are constantly trying every way to make sure that this team does not get too big for its britches and not get themselves too high or even too low, for example, because there were some good moments on defense. We saw the Dorian O'Daniel interception return for touchdown. We saw a bunch of big plays made in the secondary, and also the pressure on Lamar Jackson that forced him to be flushed out of the pocket. A lot of good things were seen by Dabo Swinney on offense and on defense, but they are continuing to find and evaluate different things that they can improve on in order to not only make this team look like the one that ended last year as national champions, but get them to that level again. Marcus Edmond, by the way, they're expecting him to be able to play, but he's still the backup at cornerback behind Trevon Mullen. DJ Greenlee will not play this week with a sprained MCL. All right, 800-956-7266. We'll take your phone calls first up here tonight on Sports Talk. And we'll hear from the coaches, and we'll hear from Lou Holtz. I'm sorry, from Skip Holtz, not Lou, sorry. And Kerry Tharp from Darlington. We'll be right back. Well, if you're a Gamecock fan, you're already sick of the 2017 season. The 2018 season schedule was announced today.
That's cold, man.
You
That's
just want to no. Listen, let me just say this: it's only one loss, like I said last
people
night.
Are jumping off the bandwagon already.
Typical. 2-1 is okay for the Gamecocks after 3 games. Losing at home to Kentucky.
A lot of people
hard to tolerate.
A lot of people invested a lot of their mental capital in that
and
contest.
Their financial capital
also
as well.
Also,
but beat Louisiana Tech, which may be a tougher game than you think. But get that one done. You're 3-1 going to A&M, and then if you can beat A&M, that makes up for the loss to Kentucky. But next year, the Gamecocks will open up with 3 home games: September 1, Coastal; September 8, Georgia; September 15, Marshall. Then a pair of road games, Vandy and Kentucky. Back home for a month, Missouri on the 6th, then Texas A&M, then an off week, and then Tennessee. Then on the road to Ole Miss, on the road to Florida, home to Chattanooga, wrap it up at Clemson on November 24th. As for the SEC season opening neutral site games next season, Alabama, which is in one of these things every year, Louisville, Alabama, Louisville in Orlando. Oof. Auburn, Washington in Atlanta.
All right.
LSU, Miami in Arlington. Ole Miss, Texas Tech in Houston. Tennessee, West Virginia in Charlotte.
All right.
All right. By the way, former USC basketball star for the women, Alicia Gray, named the WNBA Rookie of the Year
Very
today.
nice.
And I just want to mention the letter here from Ray Tanner, and then we'll get to your phone calls. He said, I've heard from many of you concerning issues about your experience on game day. And after meeting with staff and contractual partners and vendors, I would like to share what I have learned. The water issue was low pressure outside the stadium. Issues been resolved. Do not anticipate further issues moving forward. Concession stands to alleviate the lines. Points of sale around the stadium have been set up that are just for drinks, peanuts, and candy. So if you're in a line at a concession stand just for those items, you can go to one of those portable kiosks.
Yeah, I heard people complaining about just the long lines on Saturday a lot.
The DJ volume.
You were so obsessed and pent up on this DJ thing.
Modifications will be made for the next game. The problem is, let's face it, it's an older crowd. They're hard of hearing, and they didn't turn up their hearing aids.
What?
If you turn up your hearing aids, you'll hear the DJ.
I don't think they wanted to hear the DJ.
We will continue to monitor the impact of the DJ as we move through the season and make adjustments as needed.
It wasn't all hip-hop music either, Corn. There was stuff from your generation.
Excuse you? I got hip-hop on my satellite radio. Thank you.
Old school hip-hop, though.
Ray says, our goals are high. I want us to be the best at everything we do. When we don't reach our goals, it's disappointing. I promise you we will work diligently to make your visit special to watch the Gamecocks play. And as, somebody asked, I can't believe this question was asked of Muschamp today. He was asked about the DJ problem. He said, well, I don't hear the music during the game.
Please tell me that wasn't.
I'm not going to tell you who it was because he was, look, you ask questions to get answers and get stories. But, I bet you smoke was coming out of Tanner's ears in his Monday morning meeting with his associates.
He didn't look happy on Saturday night when I saw him.
Smoke was coming out of his ears.
He didn't look happy Saturday. He looked like his defeated man.
He probably felt like he called for a bunt and a guy popped it up to the catcher to end a rally. That's probably how he felt.
Bunting here, as I've come to find out, is a very sensitive subject around these parts.
Well, it's not sensitive if you can get the bunt down.
True.
All right, to the phones we go. 800-956-7266. Hank, right here in the capital city. Good evening. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right, Corn. Yeah, it was nice of Tanner to put that out there. And, it's funny that you had to talk about the DJ, and most of the complaints was that they wanted him to be louder in certain spots, and he wasn't. And so that's going to be interesting going forward. But it was very went more areas than I thought he would get into with some of the songs. But Corn, I wanted to call about your first comment. the thing that scared me about this game on Saturday was those players and talking about focus. And it wasn't for the reason of saying they weren't focused. But if you look at it, if anybody wants to look at it from a real standpoint, one of the things that Spurrier always couldn't stand was when guys started talking too well about his team. Because he said, remember, he used to always use that phrase, we don't handle praise and prosperity too well. And so my concern was that, and the fact that you had 70 freshmen and sophomore out there, so hyped up with all the other junk that was going on at the game. And even though they had first couple plays, it just seemed like, I just felt like there was too much of them, like Kurt Hershey said on game day. You got everybody, and maybe some of those players believing that Kentucky was just going to walk in there and lay down and let the Saturday night be a coronation, and then you ended up in a game.
Well, and I think maybe the scoring on the first play, they thought, man, this is going to be easy. But I'm going to say this, too, after finishing watching the game last night, I'm not sure the coaching staff was focused.
No.
Because how in the world, at the end of the half, how in the world you've got the football, okay, it's you decide not to go for it, you're going to kick a field goal, you've got time, you had the full 25 seconds on the play clock.
That was a terrible exchange. Terrible exchange.
There was nobody. Now, from what I could see, you were there.
Yeah.
From what I could see on television, they had a shot of Muschamp as he was walking up and down the sideline. There was no sense of urgency. Nobody waving their arms. Nobody saying, get out there, get out there.
They didn't have a timeout, if my memory serves me
No,
correctly.
they didn't have a timeout.
Yeah.
And they just sort of lollygagged out there. And here's the kicker. He's doing his little march-off thing, from the holder to get his proper steps.
Right, and they delay
and the time is winding down. You see it on the screen, 6. I'm thinking to myself, why are they not rushing this thing to get out there? They didn't have to rush. If everybody was focused, and I don't think coaches were focused, because focused coaches would have gotten their special teams out there in plenty of time to get set up and calmly get the kick away. And those 3 points would have been big at that particular time of the ball game.
It would have been. And, we talk a lot also, just in a separate point, but talking about focus, the ingenuity of the play calling, it lacked ingenuity. Everything was very vanilla. There was not a lot of creativity. And again, watching, I hate to use the comparison to Clemson, but what Clemson does versus what South Carolina does, or at least what they did on Saturday night, is Clemson used a lot of motion. They created a lot of different looks for the defense. You didn't see that from South Carolina. Everything was very much straightforward from them. And I think a lot of what they thought they were going to do was, like you said, they thought they were probably going to run in and run all over Kentucky, and they didn't do that.
And the question is, why would you think that, and why would you call a game like that? That just is to me, that's just mind-boggling.
Preposterous.
Yeah. All right, back to the phones. We go very quickly. Let's go to Glenn in Charleston. Welcome, Glenn. How are you?
I figured it out, Mr. Kornbluth.
Yes.
And, us down here in North Charleston, I'm pretty sure, and 98.9, and a certain party went to the game, and it's the Kahuna curse again.
Oh, the Kahuna curse. You might have something. You might have something there, Glenn. He was all jacked up, I'm sure. He thought, hey, my Gamecocks are 2-0. I'm coming to Columbia. I'm doing my show. We're going to roll Kentucky. We're going to be 3-0. Is that what he was talking about on the radio?
So I believe that Kahuna curse is back on us now.
The Kahuna curse.
So they need to go back on the road so far that he can't go to the game no more.
That's funny.
He's talking about
funny.
Bobby Hart, Big
yeah.
Kahuna. What you don't know probably is when he was in college, Bobby was the lead cheerleader at USC.
Oh,
He was the mic guy.
Gotcha.
And he was the craziest mic guy. I don't know what mic guys are like today. But he was back in my era, and he was nuts. And he does that,
not a far trip for him.
He carries that, he carries that on his radio show because he's all Gamecocks down there in Charleston, and people love him. Or most people do. Maybe some Tiger fans don't. All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate the call. 800-956-7266 is the number.
So you're telling me he's cursed, is what you're saying?
Well, that's what Glenn said.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. Back in a moment. Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic,
Sir.
and the Professor Tom Hayes, who is on vacation. Brian Leonard, once again, behind the bulletproof glass, taking your phone calls tonight, spinning our dials. He's our DJ. He spins our dials. 800-956-7266 is our number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com. And on Twitter, and Twitter has been smoking, kind of like the smoke coming out of Ray Tanner's ears. It's been smoking. At SportsTalkSC is where you can be a part of what we do on Twitter.
I want to ask you, do you think any suggestion of the fact that Kurt Roper is on the hot seat, do you think that that's something that's a real thing, or is that just fan?
Well, I don't know if he's on the hot seat or not. All I know is Muschamp had better fix his offense.
Right.
He's got a reputation for not being able to develop an offense as a head coach, and that reputation goes back to his 4 years at Florida.
You could say that's
and it followed him to South Carolina. Nobody doubts his acumen as a defensive coach, but as a head coach, you got to have the full Monty. Little reference to Monty Dutton. You got to have the full Monty.
But
you got to have the offense and the defense and the special teams.
Can you say that's the undoing of a lot of these guys who are defensive minded? I mean, you look not only across the college football landscape, NFL guys who are defensive minded guys, always their undoing is the offense.
Well, he needs to get it fixed.
Right.
I mean, he needs to get it fixed.
I'm saying it's a referendum.
312th in the country.
I'm not.
I'm
112.
112 in the country.
Not 312.
Well, if there were 320 teams, they'd be 312. 112th in the country. 115th last year.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
But you're averaging fewer yards per game so far this year than what you averaged last year.
What I'm saying is it's an indictment of defensive-minded coaches. I mean, there are very few defensive-minded coaches who have gone on and actually been successful.
Defensive-minded coaches go out and hire great offensive-minded coaches to run their offense.
They should.
If they want to be good head coaches. Speaking of Muschamp, his press conference today, let's take a listen as he reflects on the loss to Kentucky, starts looking ahead to Louisiana Tech.
Again, I want to thank our fans for last Saturday night and the great environment that they created for us. We need to coach and play better. We certainly will. In our preparation starting today, Skip Holtz obviously was an assistant here for his dad and has done a fantastic job at Louisiana Tech. Their numbers offensively has been phenomenal. They spread the field. They create some tempo. They create a lot of issues with you. They got good team speed overall, but certainly on offense with the skill position guys that can run and do a really good job. Todd Fitch, the offensive coordinator, obviously was an assistant here as well. Blake Baker, their defensive coordinator, actually was a graduate assistant for me at the University of Texas and is their defensive coordinator. So they'll be well coached. They were right there with Mississippi State, who's got obviously a good football team this year, and kind of, from a turnover standpoint, a block punt, they had a couple things go against them. The game got away, but it was certainly an outstanding game as I'm watching the tape. So we have our work cut out for us again. They had a great victory over Western Kentucky Saturday night in their conference. They're 2-1, so we need to refocus and reset and rebound. That's what we plan on doing. I'll open up for any questions.
Will, is there an update on Zach Bailey and Dante?
Zach Bailey will be out this week. He's got a high ankle sprain, so it may be a couple weeks. I'll know more Thursday. We put him in a cast to just really limit the swelling as much as anything. And they're going to pull the cast off Thursday morning, reevaluate it then. He certainly will not play this week, and I'll know more Thursday as far as that's concerned. Dante Sawyer is fine. He practiced today. A little limited, but he should be ready to go. I talked to Dabo Samuel this morning. He's being discharged, I think, within the hour or two. Again, the surgery went extremely well, and spirits were good.
Hey, Coach, how do you go about replacing a guy like Dabo? I know that's almost an impossible task for one guy to do.
Well, I agree. It's not one person doesn't step in and accomplish those things. I think it's multiple guys, and we certainly have guys that we have confidence in and have the ability to be very effective in what we're trying to do. Outside, Drake Davis, Nora Trey Smith, Brian Edwards, Terry Gouger, those guys need to continue to. Chad Terrell come on for us and certainly are capable. Shai's going to continue to play in the slot. Drake will get some more snaps in the slot. So we'll continue to try and get the best 11 on the field, and certainly that's what we need to do. Man down, man up, and it's an unfortunate situation for him, but one man's misfortune is another man's opportunity.
Will, did the guys have the right attitude? Did they on the field today? Was there like a mental hangover given the loss and the loss of Debo?
I don't think so. I think that we had a good practice today. It was a good physical Tuesday, which is what we normally have anyways. I think disappointment and being upset, and you got to move on at the end of the day. So that's what I felt today with our guys and our staff. And when you turn the tape on Louisiana Tech, you better move on quick. They got a good football team. So I think that was a wake-up call as much as anything. When we started with special teams this morning, they saw their team speed. They saw offensive and defensively some things that they do extremely well, and our guys realized we need to get ready to roll.
All right, Muschamp from his presser today, and we'll hear from Sweeney coming up after the break. 800-956-7266. Get back to your phone calls. Billy in Greenville, welcome to Sports Talk. How are you? Hello, Billy.
Billy.
Sounds like Billy fell into a tub or something. Yeah. All right, put Billy back on hold. We'll let him rest, and we'll go to Stephen in Myrtle Beach, and we'll go back to Billy, see if he's there. Stephen, your shot.
Yeah, hey, man, one man's misfortune and another guy's fortune, right? I guess Billy gave me my
one
fortune,
door closes, another door opens.
Right. Listen, I just want to, a huge Gamecock fan who calls in sparingly, but why do I feel this hate and just we're ready to change everything with Will Muschamp? But we sat around and as an administration and typically now as a fan base, sat around during those 11-2 seasons where we didn't accomplish anything, quite frankly. We were 11-2 and went to Outback Bowl, right? And recruiting-wise, but we're willing to just not lay any blame at all on Steve Spurrier and Ray Tanner because we beat Clemson 5 years in a row. I can tell you right now, and I said this during the 5-game stretch that we were beating them, but I'll say it right now, that I would trade every one of those 5 wins for what they've done at Clemson in the past 7 years, since 2010, since that recruiting ticked up and everything else. Because beating Clemson to me didn't help us at all. And maybe I'm going to hang up, Phil, because I've listened to you for years. And I don't care about the X's and O's, because if you ain't got no Jimmys and Joes, you're not going to win football games. And I don't care what Kurt Roper called up Saturday night. If you ain't got guys that can block along the offensive and defensive lines, and if I remember correctly, at one point we had the number 2 ranked recruiting class in the nation, I think in the class of 2015. Of course, that class fell all the way out of the top 25, I think. And we filled it with the Dante Stallworths and the junior college players of the world. So, but nobody, that's the elephant in the room. We're all so quick to jump on Kurt Roper and Will Muschamp and this staff, but we don't want to address Ray Tanner, who, you know, I love him to death for what he done as a baseball coach. But we don't want to address Ray Tanner, and we don't want to address what Steve Spurrier left.
Well, what has Ray done to contribute? I mean, first of all, they're 2-1, so it hasn't. They went to a bowl game last year, and they inherited a mess. They went to a bowl game last year. They're 2-1 this year. We're still the season is a long way to go. So, what has Ray Tanner done other than hire Will Muschamp and put his belief in him and give the football program every facility that they would need to be a successful program?
Well, first of all, you as a manager or supervisor of people myself, you never. And my theory is you never talk somebody out of quitting because you're afraid to move on. And 2, that lack of recruiting, and you hear it from the recruits, Phil. You're more in touch with this than I, but you heard it from those recruits back then. Not getting phone calls, other staffs out working our staff. Where was our boss to address that staff and say, hey, when those recruits started ticking off, man, when we started getting into double digits and decommit, where was our athletic director to question our staff? Where was our athletic director to question Steve Spurrier and say, hey, man, what's going on here? You know, I mean, that's my point. We dropped the ball.
All right. We got to hit a break. We'll come back and address your comments.
I will. I have some responses to that.
Sure. We'll be right back. Thank you for your phone call. Back we are, Sports Talk, brought to you by South Carolina Electric Cooperative, sponsor of this year's annual Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. To find out more about what the co-ops are doing across the state, and they're doing great work, visit ecsc.org and save that date, December 9th, for the Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. All right, 800-956-7266, some Dabo Swinney coming up. Just to go back to the previous caller's comments and questions, Stephen in Myrtle Beach. And, again, Ray Tanner, I hear what you're saying. Going back to the end of the Spurrier regime when things kind of fell off recruiting-wise, was he pressing them on the matter? And I hear what you're saying. He shouldn't have talked Spurrier out of quitting after they won down in Shreveport. When Spurrier did want to walk away,
put them in,
and they talked him out of it, or his family talked him out. Somebody talked him out of it, and it led to disarray in a wasted year for the most part, because he quit midway through, and recruiting took a dive. And he's right; they lost a lot of good players who were committed. One of them, was playing the other night, Arden Key for LSU, and playing very well.
Part of the problem was the fact that you even had Spurrier saying, I only want to coach 2 or 3 more years. And that basically led to a mass exodus of players away from the program.
Good Lord.
And I think that,
imagine this, if those commitments had held.
Yes.
Let's just say, now, look, you still had to go sign them.
Yes.
But South Carolina could have on its defense Arden Key, Mark Fields Jr., Jair, Jair Alexander at Louisville. Those are 3 that come to mind that were South Carolina. Chauncey Rivers, though he probably would have gotten into trouble here, but he was a commitment.
He would have liked 5 points. Is that what you're saying?
He would have liked probably a lot of things. So, they could have had a lot of good talent on that defense.
And here's the problem too, when you try to play that game though, is that if you did not have such a dire situation, like think about where they were before they got Will Muschamp. Like who was really out there that was attainable for South Carolina?
Tom Herman.
They didn't want Tom. They weren't going to get Tom Herman.
They were not Tom Herman.
They were not going to get Tom.
They had Tom Herman.
They were not going to get Tom Herman.
They had Tom Herman.
They were not going to get Tom Herman.
They had Tom Herman. You must not be paying attention.
I'm paying attention to what you're saying.
They had, and if you don't believe me, as a lot of people don't, and some people do, go back and look at Dan Wolken, who after the fact wrote that Tom Herman had agreed to come to South Carolina, which we had reported, but everybody poo-pooed, had agreed to come to South Carolina, and then they lost to the Citadel.
Right.
And he called him back basically and said, that's too much of a rebuilding job for me. I'm not leaving. And of course now he's at Texas. But they had Tom
always wanting that Texas job.
He had Tom Herman in his crosshairs and had an agreement in principle. And he backed away from it.
Well, here's a problem with Tom Herman.
But I see nothing wrong with Will Muschamp as the head coach. But he's going to have to fix his offense at some point.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that when you're looking at what he has done in his past, yes, the downfall at Florida is one thing, but he's the best head coach you could have gotten for the situation that you have currently. Now, is it going to be great off the start? No. There might be some things that they have to do, but at the same time, you have to recognize this is a rebuilding situation. This is not a finished product. Far from it.
Yeah, agreed. A finished product is Clemson.
Yes.
There's no question about it. They just keep rolling. Doesn't matter if it's Deshaun Watson or whether it's Kelly Bryant or whether it's Mike Williams or whether it's Ray McLeod. They got it going on offense, over 600 yards against Louisville last weekend.
They are, and of course, they have a divisional opponent coming in for the 2nd consecutive week. Dabo Swinney waxing poetic on the Eagles of Boston College.
BC is another division game for us. Record-wise, they're 1-2, but you got to look beyond that. They played a really good Northern Illinois team and beat them. Northern Illinois that just went to Nebraska and won. They lost to Wake Forest, had several turnovers, but Wake Forest is a good football team. They're sitting 3-0 right now, and a very good team. And then a very tough Notre Dame game. Notre Dame, that game at the end of the 3rd quarter, right there at the end, it was a really tight ball game and kind of got away in the 4th quarter. But this is a very tough, hard-nosed, physical team. There's a different mindset that you have to bring when you get ready to play Boston College. And I think that speaks to their head coach, Coach Adazio. I mean, what a great job he does. That's their mindset is you're going to have to beat them. They don't usually ever beat themselves. You've got to win the physical matchup because they're going to force the issue. And if you don't have the right mindset going into it, they're going to expose you. Looking forward to the challenge. Their offense, they're a lot of 12 and 11 personnel type of a team. Going to run the power, the counter, the swap zones. I mean, that's what they do. And the little difference this year is they're doing it really, really fast, a lot of tempo. And so their explosives come off the run game, and they want to be able to establish a physical presence in the run game. Impressed with their quarterback. He's a young player, but he's got a good feel for what they're doing. Throw the ball. He can run around and make some plays as well. A lot of play actions, a lot of boots, a lot of things like that, a lot of max protections that come off with their success in the run game. And again, they're playing with a lot of tempo. So a lot of discipline that we have to play with versus these guys. And then defensively, their defense is very experienced. I think they got 12 guys back that started at some point last year. So a lot of guys with a lot of experience. They got that number 7 led the nation in sacks last year. He's a real problem. He's a great pass rush guy. They're big and strong inside. You rarely ever see anybody move that number 96. He is. I bet he squats 800 pounds. I mean, he is a strong D tackle. And so just impressed with how they play against the run. Excited to win the game last week, but there's a lot we got to improve on. A lot of some missed opportunities on offense. Probably played our worst game defensively of the 3 games we've played, and so a lot of room for improvement as we get back on the field this weekend, and again back at it today with a good tough physical Tuesday practice.
If you hear that last 15 seconds, would that not get you so peeved if you were a member of that Clemson defense? We played our worst game of the season. You gave up only 21 points to a guy who put 36 up on you last year.
He's just trying to keep him humble.
Oh, I know.
He's just trying to keep him focused.
It's all a game. It's all a con game. I understand. It's trying to make you have the Jedi mind tricks with Dabo Swinney. I get it. But if I'm a defensive player, I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, really?
I think they know Dabo.
I think
they know how he operates.
I think.
All right, recruiting. Clemson commitment. Defensive end Xavier Thomas, Florence and IMG Academy last night tweeted a brief response. In fact, it was a response to our tweet about his father's Facebook post earlier in the day, in which he said that while he wanted his son to take his official visits, he understands he's fully committed to Clemson and won't be pressing the issue with him moving forward. The younger Thomas tweeted, quote, "This is true facts, and I'm not taking the visits. We are all in." So there, we think. Defensive back Israel Mukuamu, Bossier City, Louisiana, Florida State commitment, still plans on taking all 5 officials. Last night he disclosed those plans to us, which will include a stop at USC in October. His first official this weekend to Indiana. The week after, he goes to Georgia. Visit 3 will be to USC. He's planning for that to be the weekend of the Arkansas game, October 7. That date has been discussed with Travaris Robinson, but it has not been officially nailed down, but that's the weekend that he is looking at. He'll go to Florida State October 20th for the Louisville game. He'll also visit Louisville. USC remains in hot pursuit of him. USC is among the top 20 teams with 2020 athlete. Let me say that again. USC is among the top teams with 2020 athlete Johnny Dixon of Tampa. Also on his list, Auburn, Alabama, South Florida, Oregon, Florida State, Ohio State, Florida, and Tennessee. Basketball, 6'5" Aaron Neesmith of Portugal committed to Vanderbilt today over USC in Florida, and USC assistant Chuck Martin was at GTA Prep in Ontario, where USC has offered 6'10" Keosi Izagu from up there. And we'll be back, top of the hour break. Whenever you're ready, let me know. Tell me when you're ready.
You're up.
All right. Coming down in 3, 2, 1. Another of the state's top in-state basketball prospects is headed out of state. 6'5" Aaron Neesmith of Porter Gaud on Tuesday committed to Vanderbilt over USC and Florida. In football, defensive back Israel Mukuamu of Bossier City, Louisiana, a Florida State commitment, has figured out all 5 of his official visits. He's going to go to Indiana this weekend and Georgia next weekend. He plans to visit USC for the Arkansas game on October the 7th. He's going to Florida State October 20th for the Louisville game. He'll also take a visit to Louisville. USC's among the top 20 teams. Pick it up here. And USC's among the top teams with 2020 athlete Johnny Dixon of Tampa. The others on his short list are Auburn, Alabama, South Florida, Oregon, Florida State, Ohio State, Florida, and Tennessee. Phil Kornbluth, South Carolina Radio Network Sports.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
It is indeed your favorite sports talk show in all of the world, with your two favorite sports talk show hosts. 3 if Pro were here. He's not. He's on vacation. Korn and Pelage.
Stop it.
I like Pelage. Brian, what do you think of Pelage?
It's so
As a
dumb.
Nick, he likes it.
It's
Brian
so
Leonard has
dumb.
given me 2 thumbs up on Pelage
Still outvoted.
as your nickname.
Still outvoted on that.
Let's throw it out there to the listeners. Do you
We've
like
already-
Pelage?
we've
Do you
already-
like Pelage?
We've already done this 3 times.
No, we haven't.
We did it 3 times in the first week I was here. They
Well,
all said Willie
nobody
B.
cared then. They didn't know you. Now that they know you,
They know
it's time to apply
the
a
only-
true nickname.
the only thing that they know is that I hate Pelage. And that's the only reason. I think that's the only reason you like it. Is because you know I hate it.
All right, 800-956-7266. More from Muschamp and Sweeney coming up in a moment. Let's go to Lancaster.
Did you want to clarify the comment?
Oh, yeah. Real quick email in here from Richard listening to us in Sumter. And he says he accuses us
Yes.
of trying to gin up callers.
Gin up. Yeah.
Come on, Richard. You know better than that. But he says, I think Dabo was talking about Boston College last year. His next opponent talking about when he said the worst, they played their worst defensive game last week and against Louisville. And that's what we've been saying. You went back to double check his comments and
He said that we played our worst defensive game last week of the 3 games we've played
this season.
Yes.
He was not talking about the defensive game last year against Boston College.
And as the astute Grace Rayner of the Post and Courier put out in her comments, basically said,
why are you citing Grace?
Because she said in a tweet like 2 hours ago, anybody inside the program was acknowledging that this is probably the worst defensive game they've played all season. And yet, they still held the defending Heisman Trophy winner.
A reminder that last year Clemson beat Boston College 56-10 and gave up 251 yards.
So that further exacerbates the fact that the comment that we were saying about Dabo Swinney is correctly attributed.
Yes. Listen, boom! We don't make mistakes here on Sports Talk. Remember that. We go to Tiger Bryan in Lancaster. How you doing, Tiger Bryan?
Man, I'm doing great, man. I'll tell you what, y'all call lucky to see it. I appreciate that, though.
Thank you.
But you know what? Everybody's getting on South Carolina and all. You can't compare South Carolina to Clemson because we've recruited. We have recruited the last 5, 6, 7 years. All right, hey, Spurrier left them in the hole. He left them dead in the water. Paul Muschamp and them guys, they didn't have a lot to work with. And they got a little bit of, work with them. And they got a long haul to go, but, it's recruiting, man. It's recruiting, and it's getting what you can get out of the recruits that you get. You know what I mean?
Well, there's development involved as well. That's correct.
Well, that's something that that Dabo was talking about in his press conference. The staff there takes pride in taking a lot of those unfinished products and turning them into finished products. I talked with one of them, Dorian O'Daniel, in an interview that we'll feature later on this week on Sports Talk. He's a guy who came out of high school basically as a running back, much to the same tune as Vic Beasley did. He didn't know a darn thing about linebacker. He didn't know a Sam from a Mike from a Will. And look at him. He's one of the leading tacklers on this defense. So it's not as if you don't know how to recruit guys who fit your system when they first get there. You got to make them fit your system by the time they leave. And that's the difference between recruiting and development.
Now, I'll say this about Spurrier, and people want to harp on him about recruiting. He never really believed recruiting was the most important thing. He believed
he was a teacher.
That player development was the most important thing. He believed that he could, and this was part of his confidence, cockiness. He felt like he could take a lesser player and make him into a better player.
We have some comments on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Jason says Spurrier was the short-sighted spouse who cut out when the going got tough. It's a miracle anyone took the job at South Carolina. Anthony says years ago when Spurrier made comments about retiring, much to the point that I made, he destroyed the recruiting. Why do Gamecock fans think he's so great?
Well, listen, I'm not going to disparage Spurrier because he did give South Carolina their 3 greatest years consecutively in its history, and they did things they'd never done before in the football program. So I'm not going to take away anything from what he and his staff accomplished there. But what I will criticize him for is that he left the program in shambles. Now, this is what happens when you hire a coach who's on the backside of his career. That's why, if you're a Gamecock fan, the hiring of Muschamp, you have to have the belief and the hope that you're catching a coach on the upside of his career who is going to build first a foundation for a program and then add on to that. The wins will, you hope, will come, and with the wins will come better recruiting and better players, but it just takes time.
And the other thing, too, about hiring a coach like Muschamp, someone who's suffered a bit of a downfall in his career previously, despite having some very heightened points also when he was at Florida, is that you're not catching an up-and-comer. You're not catching somebody who's going to use this job as a stepping stone. You're catching somebody who is going to try to, like you said, build the foundation and maybe build up some years here. I mean,
well,
if you look at Will Muschamp, and again, I know every coach tries to do this. The guy's fully invested in this program, and I think that he's completely bought into what the program and the identity that he wants to build for that program. It's a matter of whether or not he can get it all done, and there's still questions on that.
Yeah, well, keep in mind now, he owes Ray Tanner a lot. He owes University of South Carolina a lot for giving him a chance to become a head coach again at the highest level in college, just a year removed from getting fired. I don't know how many other opportunities he had at this level.
Probably not.
Probably none. And so, if anything, if he becomes successful and others come knocking, the loyalty factor should play in. But then again, I don't know how much loyalty matters anymore to anybody.
I know this much. Another SEC school wouldn't have hired him. I don't think so. Unless you, I mean, of the jobs that might have been open.
Georgia had its eyes on Kirby.
They
when they made the decision to part ways with Mark.
Wasn't going to go back to Florida, obviously.
Wasn't going back to Florida.
Missouri probably wouldn't have hired him.
LSU would not. When they went through their thing.
LSU might have, but the problem with LSU is they didn't know what the heck they were doing between the whole Les Miles, will he or won't he, or will we or won't we, or, that whole situation got completely messed up from the get-go there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would have wanted to go to LSU after the way that whole thing ended.
Boy, talk about a beatdown this past weekend.
And that was one.
Oh my goodness!
That was one that only a few of us saw on happening correctly. Of those of us who picked that game.
Did you pick? I think
I picked Mississippi State.
Let me go back since you brought it up. Let me go back here and look. I took Mississippi State.
Okay.
Yeah, you took Mississippi State. I mean, I didn't expect him to win by a landslide like that. That was complete domination.
I had no problem.
I thought they would win at home. They were getting 7.5 at home. So to me, that was a logical pick. And Nick Fitzgerald is, goodness, he might be, top 2. Well, he certainly is top 2, top 3 quarterbacks in the SEC right now.
At least.
If not better.
And that's not an easy place to go down there and win either.
Oh, it's cowbells. How about, we haven't had a chance to talk about this, the end of Florida. Tell you a quick funny story.
Tackle the freaking receiver.
So I'm driving back from Louisville Sunday and stop outside of Knoxville to grab a burger at a McDonald's. I'm driving through, and I pull up to the pay window. A young man, probably in his low 20s. He looked hungover and just downcast. And I said, "Hey, how you doing, man?" He said, "I'm not doing all that good." And I knew what he was talking about. I said, "Yeah." I said, "Y'all got to make a play on that. You got to knock the ball down." And on his phone, he had his phone right there with the picture. He said, "Look at this." And he shows me his phone, and he's got a picture of the line of scrimmage on the last play. And he says, "Look, the Florida receivers lined up off sides. You can see it. He's lined up in the neutral zone. That should have been offsides." And he said there should have been a face mask call on that play as well. He said that play should never have happened. And my point is, here's a total stranger pulling up to McDonald's to pay for a hamburger.
You knew exactly what you're talking about.
Well, no, this poor guy's still dealing with the heartbreak of losing on the last play to Florida.
Just tackle the guy, tackle the receiver, get a 15-yard penalty, play the untimed
Don't
down.
get beat deep.
Exactly.
Be back. All right, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Talking Tuesday. Let's hear more from Will Muschamp. We heard him talking about the loss to Kentucky and getting past that. And one of the things he was asked about, some of the players who we talked to today made comments about, our focus wasn't great. We weren't mentally sharp. Maybe we took them a little bit for granted, that kind of stuff. And Muschamp was asked to respond about those kind of comments from his players.
We have a lot of confidence in A.J. Turner, and he runs extremely hard. He runs the inside zone extremely well. Certainly when you don't have the results you want, it's easy to question that.
It's wrong one. Okay, let's try that again. That was Muschamp on the running game. Let's try Muschamp on questions about the focus on Kentucky, please.
I think we played with great effort. I think we competed extremely hard in the game. Let's not confuse a loss with lack of effort, and I think that frustrates me when I hear that, because that's not always the case. It's an easy cop-out to say, well, they lost the game. Obviously, they didn't play very hard, or obviously they weren't focused. We were focused the first play of the game. We seemed to be very focused defensively the second play of the game. We had positive results. At the end of the day, it comes down to execution, and we got to coach better, and we need to play better. And, we haven't had an issue with offsides throughout training camp, throughout the first two ball games on the road, and we had an issue with it 4 times the other night. So whether it's dialing in, focus, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, we need to execute better.
Will, are you satisfied with the offensive play calling?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we like to execute a little better. I think we had a hard time getting in a rhythm Saturday, and you go 4 straight 3-and-outs, but defensively you don't get off the field. You don't even create. It's a team game. And you've got to create opportunities for yourself to get into a rhythm. We got into a pretty good rhythm when Jake completed 16 straight. Would he have liked to have the ball back to Brian Edwards for a touchdown? Absolutely. No question about that. That was a good play call. We'd like to have the ball back to KC on their sideline, I believe the second play of the game, or I'm not positive, maybe in the third or fourth play of the game. But certainly would have liked to have had some of those back. But at the end of the day, we threw for over 300 yards. He was 16 of 16 at one point in the game, which was outstanding. He completed close to 70% of his passes. We need to run the ball better. And a little of that issue, you got 9 running back runs in the first half, 4 in the second half. We're in a little bit of an RPO world right now. We're based on the box, which the first play of the game was an RPO. So we had 3 explosives in the game. We had multiple explosives in the first 2 games because of good decision-making from the quarterback position to the receiver position in those situations, because it creates a lot of one-on-ones down the field. But we need to be more effective running the football. That's going to help our passing game. That's going to help everything. It's going to help our defense. It's going to help everything.
Well, following up on replacing Dabo, is it necessary to find one guy who can come close to being a consistent producer for you, or can you get it done with just spreading it around, having 2 or 3 more guys step up?
Well, I certainly feel like you can with multiple people, and I look at our tight end position, and Casey Crosby is a guy that's been a playmaker for us and hasn't necessarily gotten as many touches or looks that we would have liked. He had one the other night on a slant down on the goal line. Hayden Hurst continues to need to play well for us. I mean, I think it's a collective effort as far as those things are concerned, and I think within the collective effort of the guys we've got are certainly capable.
Coach, have you addressed some of the issues in the kicking game, and where do you guys go from there this week?
Well, the issues where we missed 3 field goals and an extra point. Other than that, our coverage units were outstanding. And, they sky kicked for the most part. Our field position on kickoff return was very good. So we had the only issue we had in the kicking game was kicking field goals and extra points. Parker White will kick field goals this weekend.
Will, is part of the maturity of an SEC quarterback his ability to kind of lift the team after a tough loss? And do you have confidence that Jake can?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Gene. I think that he's got all the leadership ability, the belief in the team to rebound from a tough defeat and move forward.
All right, Will Muschamp from his presser today. By the way, a little note for your housekeeping purposes. Moving forward, his press conferences on Tuesday will start at 12:30.
Interesting.
Instead of 1 o'clock, because I think just with his schedule, and there's a lot of downtime, we finish up with the players and with Bentley a little bit after 12. We're talking like 12 o'clock. We had a whole hour to kill until Muschamp came in. I guess with his schedule, he's been able to rearrange it to where he can do it now at 12:30.
So that kills my whole plan about going to Doc's now next week. You go with Doc's barbecue.
Doc's doesn't close that early. Yeah, plenty of time to get there after the presser.
I don't know about that.
All right, up at Clemson, you were there for that, and more from Dabo Swinney as he was breaking down various and sundry parts of his team.
Well, it was interesting to kind of listen to the way that he talks about this secondary, and I don't think we really understood at the outset of the season what exactly they had at that position. Just evidenced by the fact that they've had to go and replace a lot of those guys during the parts of the season. You think about Tanner Muse with the targeting issue. You talk about Van Smith, who had an injury. We had the injury, of course, that Marcus Edmond had, of course. So Clemson has had to really address a lot of issues at the secondary, and Dabo Swinney says they have done so very admirably.
Trayvon has earned the right to be the starter right now. I mean, we've got a lot of competition at corner, and it's the old saying, you can't make the club in the tub. Marcus has had some tough breaks. And nobody's entitled around here. There's good players, and that's just the way it is. But Marcus will be fine. He'll hopefully he'll be back this week. But if not, he'll be back here soon, and he'll be right in the mix. Marcus is a really good player. I think Marcus is one of those guys that when it's all said and done, he's gonna have a chance to play at the next level. He's fast. He's long. He's got really good skills. He's put some strength together. You haven't been able to see it much this year because he's had some unfortunate injuries. He got hurt in camp early, missed a good bit of camp, and with a hamstring, and then the midfoot sprain, fighting through that. But he'll be back, and but he'll play. I mean, who runs out there first? That's kind of a week-to-week deal, to be honest with you. Right now at that position, we've got good players there that are competing every week to go be the guy.
The play of the DBs this year. What's your impression so far this year? What you've seen from your DB group?
They've been really good. We've only been out of position a few times. We had a couple. We had one bust on our DBs the other night. The other one was one of our backers wasn't where he was supposed to be, but they've been in position, and we haven't had a million pass interferences. I know we had two pretty quick in the Auburn game, but we really kind of cleaned it up, playing with a much better technique. We didn't play as well with our eyes the other night and some of our zone stuff that we were doing, but they've been just much more disciplined as a group. But I kind of knew that coming into it. Y'all heard me say that many times. I really felt like it was maybe the best secondary we've had, the deepest, most versatile group that we've had. So we haven't really, I don't think, come even close to what I think our potential is. But after 3 games and a couple of top 15 matchups, we've held our own and have done a pretty good job. So I like the depth. I like the fact that it's unfortunate that we had a couple guys go out. Van got hurt, Muse got kicked out, and but we've had guys go in and play and play in critical situations. And so I like the depth that we've been able to create after 3 games, and we've got good versatility there. Our corners, we've got a bunch of corners that can play both sides, and we don't talk enough about Ryan Carter. Ryan Carter. Man, he is one of our MVPs. I mean, he is a very good football player. I mean, outstanding football player. Does a lot of things that people don't notice. Just really like where they are. I like how they're competing. It's a high level of competition every single week. They're all getting opportunities to play. So we've never really been able to rotate like we're able to rotate right now in that secondary. So that's pretty fun to be able to see those guys all get a chance to play.
All right, Dabo Swinney from up at Clemson today. And, the Tigers do have a little bit of issue in the secondary with the injuries, and Muse, of course, getting ejected in that game last week. But they do have depth. Isaiah Simmons went in, did a great job back there at safety, and you heard him talking about some of the other how valuable Ryan Carter has been, playing really 3 different positions in that secondary. And this is a guy, when he committed, at the same time some other guys did from his school, everybody thought this guy was just a throw-in. Back in just a moment. All right, the playoffs are underway over at Darlington. Well, all over NASCAR for that matter, but especially at Darlington and Darlington County, where we keep a close watch on these things. Kind of butchered that intro.
That's very
but
bad.
The playoffs are underway, and what I was trying to say is the playoffs begin just like most of the regular season, with Martin Truex Jr. just dominating in Chicago and coming away with a win in the first round of the chase. And we have the president of Darlington Raceway with us, KT, Kerry Tharp. So, hey, I guess they're proving it was no fluke what they did throughout the regular season.
Well, you're exactly right, Phil. I mean, he picked up where he left off. That race team has certainly got everything going on. It's almost just like a football team or a basketball team that has all the chemistry going. They're on a hot streak. They've been good. They've been very, very good through the regular season. They were very good the other day at Chicagoland, and quite frankly, I don't see anybody that's going to beat them right now. I think the only person that can beat Martin Truex Jr. would be Martin Truex Jr. I just think that the race team is that good. They've got that much momentum going. Everything seems to be clicking. There's plenty of mile-and-a-half racetracks coming up in the schedule in the playoffs, especially the last one at Homestead, Miami. And I certainly think that he's the driver to beat.
So, all right, help me out here now. So he's got to win, so he's automatically into the next round after these next two races. But with the points he accumulated in the regular season, all those playoff bonus points, what does that do for him moving forward?
Well, those points carry over. He will keep those points throughout the entirety of the playoffs. And so I don't have his entire point totals in front of me. But those points play a big factor. If, for instance, if he didn't win a race in one of the playoff sections, he would still advance likely because of points.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he's built himself up a very, very nice cushion to advance, even if he doesn't win. But I mean, he won the opener, so the pressure is off. He goes to New Hampshire, and I'm sure he's still going for the win. But right now, he's already locked into the next round. So, but those points do carry over throughout the entirety of the playoffs.
What do you think about Chase Elliott not only hit with a penalty, but suspended for a race, fined, and his car chief also suspended? That's a crushing blow to a guy who finished second in Chicago.
Well, it really is, Will. And this time of year when you have your crew chief that's going to be out, that plays havoc with your rhythm. And, I would say if this was regular season, it might not be that big of a deal. Alan Gustafson is a very, very seasoned crew chief, and I know there's a lot of depth over there at Rick Hendrick at Hendrick Motorsports, and so I'm sure that they'll have somebody that can handle it quite well. But that's a big deal for them because they ran so well at Chicagoland, and really looked like maybe that was one of the stories that was coming out of Chicagoland. But all of a sudden, that's kind of like thrown out. I think they're going to have to win a race now, maybe to advance to the next round, or if not, at least have a couple of good finishes coming up because that point penalty hurt them pretty bad. So, a big setback for the 2014 here. But like I said, there is a lot of depth over there at Hendrick Motorsports.
Let me clarify for you, unless I misheard you. Elliott was not suspended for a race; just the crew chief was suspended.
The crew chief, Alan Gustafson.
Yeah.
Alan Gustafson will miss the race at New Hampshire, but. That's still a big deal, Phil, when you get to this stage of the playoffs. It'd be like losing, Joe Girardi couldn't manage in the second game of the playoffs or something. Yeah. Sometimes, Phil, you might think that's a good thing, but I don't think it would be for something like that to happen. So, it's all about timing. It's all about chemistry, and I'm sure there's a lot of late meetings going on over there right now at Hendrick Motorsports to try to get this thing back together.
Absolutely. Actually, I like Joe Girardi. I like it when he's in the dugout. I don't want to see him on the sideline, to be quite honest with you. So
I don't either.
Martin Truex Jr., he's got it rolling, and I'm just looking down the list of the finishers. Jimmy Johnson came in 8th, and I guess people are just kind of waiting for him to pop a victory here and move on to the next round of the playoffs as well. But this is what makes it interesting now. Okay, you got a little more wiggle room at New Hampshire, but for the guys that don't win or finish, well, then that makes that third race everything for the season.
Well, it really does. And you look at drivers like Ryan Newman, Kurt Busch, in particular, Casey Kane, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., those guys probably need to win to get into the next round, and there's a lot of pressure on them in the next couple of races. New Hampshire coming up is a flat 1 mile racetrack. I don't think really any of those drivers I just mentioned are exceptional there at New Hampshire. Now, Dover, I think Ryan Newman's run well there before, so it's Kurt Busch. But, you get into this part of the season now, and the racetracks start taking on a little bit different characteristics. Like I said, we just come off a 1.5 miles. We're going to a flat 1 mile racetrack in New Hampshire, and then a high bank 1 mile racetrack at Dover.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy Johnson's exceptional at Dover. So, you got to believe that he's going to excel here at one of these tracks in the next couple of weeks.
Kara, what does it do for a guy who is in this playoff position, a guy like a Jamie McMurray or a Matt Kenseth who comes in here in the playoffs despite not having a win in there, basically based on points? It kind of brings a new life and a new lease on life for a guy like that who can come in and gain some confidence just by being in that 16 racer field.
Well, there's no question, Will. I mean, I remember a few years ago, Ryan Newman got down to the finals there in Homestead, Miami, and almost won the championship had it not been maybe for a late race caution there a couple of years ago. He hadn't won a race,
right.
But he had just been so consistent over the course of the season and the playoffs that it paid off for him. And so, really those guys right now, though, they got to think about winning a race. I think that the spread in there is a little tight for them right now. So, they cut to 12 after Dover. And so unless you're in that side of that top 12 unless you've won a race, you're not going to make it. So, but what it does, I think, like you said, it does give you second chance. It gives you hope. You could have gotten maybe beaten the first round of your conference tournament in the basketball, but you still get a bid in the NCAAs. You still have life. So that's kind of what they're facing right now.
All right, one more news note is that Casey Kane has signed on to drive the 95 next year, so he'll be back for another year in NASCAR. All right, real quick, want to pivot to football. Your old buddy, Skip Holtz, coming back to Columbia this weekend with Louisiana Tech. What did you? What were some of your best memories with Skip during his days at USC?
Well, Phil, I thought Skip was an excellent offensive football coach. I can remember one year we're playing Alabama in Columbia, and they got a big lead on us there in the first half. I want to say they were up 3 scores, and Coach Holtz, I think, turned the offense totally over to Skip in the second half. And, I think we won in a shootout, like 35-33 or something like that, if I recall. And I thought he was a very good play caller. I think he's a great, he's just a great guy. I mean, Skip, he's a super person to be around. But I always enjoyed Skip because I thought he brought out the best of people. He's kind of a happy-go-lucky guy. I think he's done a good job at Louisiana Tech. They went down to Western Kentucky last week and beat up on my alma mater, the Hilltoppers. So that was a good win for them, though. I know they got beat pretty good a couple weeks ago by Mississippi State, if I'm not mistaken. They were the team that was involved in that, 3rd and 90 play, if I'm not mistaken, when that snap to the quarterback when Ryan got kicked down the field several times by them and Mississippi State players. But, Skip will bring in a team that's very, very hard-nosed, very, very well-schooled, particularly on the offensive side. So, I know the Gamecocks better be ready to play.
Yeah, and they need a win in the worst way after this last Saturday. So, all right, KT, thank you, man. Look forward to New Hampshire this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, KT.
All right, Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington Raceway, with us tonight here on Sports Talk. And, yes, the point standings a little bit changed after what happened with the Chase Elliott car. Getting that penalty cost him a bunch of points.
It goes from 6th to 8th, I believe, is how much of a fall he makes.
I think you're right. All right, we'll hit a break, and we'll be back. In fact, we're going to hear from Skip Holtz coming up.
We have another great challenge in front of us this week, playing another Southeast Conference team.
Okay, we're back. Going to hear from Skip Holtz in just a moment. Here on Sports Talk, want to give you the high school football report tonight. Brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau, you could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you've received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever. So get a no-obligation quote today at favrates.com. Want to give you the latest high school football rankings, courtesy of the high school football report. Man, the season is just flying by. We've got week 5 coming up of the high school football season,
as opposed to week 6, because of the fact that you were trying to use the old.
Well, I'm just going by the
rankings.
high school leagues deal. I mean,
know.
it's just too confusing to try to do it on your own.
They got on you for that, I think, didn't they?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
My man in Spartanburg did.
Yeah.
Bob Dalton, the sports editor there. He has a one-man campaign going to call it what it is, which would be week 6 if you go by
the week 0,
the chronology of it. But the high school league starts with week 0, which would make this, if you started with week 1, this would be week 6.
Yeah, but it isn't.
But since you started by calling it week 0, it makes it week 5. Okay.
It's odd.
Pig is a pig, a dog is a dog. You call it what it is.
Wag.
So, high school sports report, 5A, top 10, Fort Dorchester, Burns, T.L. Hanna, Dutch Fork, Conway, Spring Valley, Greenwood, Boiling Springs, Spartanburg, look out for the Vikings, and Sumter at 10, Gaffney's 11. In 4A, South Point, number 1, followed by North Myrtle Beach, Hartsville, North Augusta, South Aiken, Belton Honeypath, Greenville, Ridgeview, Eastside, Greer. 3A, Chapman is number 1, followed by Dillon, Newberry, Gilbert, Manning, Palmetto, Powdersville, Chester, Broome, and Aner. In 2A, it's Abbeville, numero 1, followed by Barnwell, Lee Central, Shura, Saluda, Chesterfield, Carvers Bay, Gray Collegiate, Buford, and sitting there at number 10, it's the mighty Vikings, the home of champions, Latta.
Look at you.
Right there at number 10.
Look at you getting some love.
And climbing. In 1A, Lamar, Hemingway, Wagner Sally, Lakeview, Baptist Hill, Louisville, St. John's, C.E. Murray, Williston Elko, and Cross. Your boys, Whitmire, the Wolves.
Wagner Sally, sneaky good.
At number 19.
As our good friend said. Oh, by the way, the team formerly known as Willie P's Bishops won last night. Beat Woodland.
But you've already dumped them. You've moved on to Whitmire, have you not?
They dumped me. That's the way that.
Well, Whitmire wants you. I mean, when the coach calls up and says, "We'll take you,"
I'm all in. I'm ready.
You gotta accept.
They gotta do a court warming or something. You know, some sort of ceremony or some sort.
Well, I think if they just offer to feed you, you'll find a way to get there to participate.
You're all over my eating habits this week.
That's all you've been talking about for the last hours. I got to have a hamburger.
It's because you were the one who were talking about the McDonald's trip in Knoxville. It got me hungry.
Okay.
I've been eating since Dabo's Chick-fil-A at 12 o'clock.
Be cool. 9 more minutes. You're good to go.
Gotcha.
All right. Skip Holtz returns home to one of his homes, Columbia. Of course, he was here with his dad as quarterbacks coach, tight ends coach, assistant head coach, offensive coordinator at one point until Dad said, nope, taking that away from you when things were going kind of rough. So he's got a La Tech team that is coming off 3 straight 9-win seasons, 3 straight bowl wins, can throw it around pretty good, has got a defensive end coming into the game with 22.5 career sacks with USC's offensive tackle situation with Bailey out and Now Young playing on the right side, Daly on the left side. That could be a battle worth watching. So Skip Holtz is going to bring a team into Columbia that he thinks probably can beat the Gamecocks. Here are some of his thoughts on that from earlier today.
We have another great challenge in front of us this week, playing another Southeast Conference team, this time on the road. I have spent a lot of time at South Carolina, spent some wonderful years there coaching with my father, had some great memories, met some great people. I know how rabid that fan base is. I know what that stadium is like, the atmosphere, and it's going to be a great environment for our players to have the chance to go experience. On the field, I think we're going to play a really good football team. When I sit out and look at them, especially when I look at where they are offensively, we'll play. He was one of the top 5 passers as a freshman in Southeast Conference a year ago in Bentley. I think he is a very poised quarterback. He is very comfortable in the pocket. He's very comfortable in the spread and throwing the ball, but yet he runs the ball extremely efficient as well. So he is a thorn in the side of a lot of defensive coordinators, I'm sure, in the Southeast Conference, and we're going to get an opportunity to deal with him this week. Very talented quarterback, competitor, tough, hard-nosed, runs, competes, throws the ball very well. I think he is. I think he'll be a real challenge and be one of the better quarterbacks that we're going to play. Offensively, even though they have a sophomore quarterback, they don't turn the ball over very often. They've only turned it over 3 times. They're 14th in the country in takeaways. They have 7 takeaways already in 3 games, which scares me a little bit. We've been really good at giving it away, and they're really good at taking it away. And that's not a good combination when you're going on the road to play a talented team like South Carolina. Their offensive line, they have 4 returning starters. They're big up front, as you would expect an SEC team to be. They have 2 very talented, multiple tight ends that can attack multiple ways. They're very good blockers. They're very good receivers. They've got a really good running back, and I know they've got a good core receivers as well for Bentley to throw to, even with the injury that they had, unfortunate injury they had this week to one of their star receivers. I look at them defensively. I think they do a million different things on defense. They give you a lot of problems. They play 4 down, 3 down. They give you a lot of different looks. They play a lot of different coverages, which will be a challenge for our young receivers and quarterbacks. But like I said, they're very big up front. They're very athletic at linebacker. Their linebacker, Brunson, is 2nd in the league in tackles. Very active player. Their safeties are really solid in what they do. They don't have a lot of weaknesses. I mean, they're a football team that they're very solid across the board, and it's going to be a challenge for us going into that stadium.
Skip Holtz sounds like Skip Holtz did back in the day when he was at South Carolina.
You think that Louisiana Tech's got a legit shot in this game?
Well, I know that they have a pretty dangerous quarterback.
Yeah.
I think that they can do some things offensively. I think that South Carolina has got to come out and play clean football. They cannot have the mistakes, the mental mistakes, the physical mistakes that they had Saturday. Even though he threw for over 300 yards, Bentley has got to deliver on those passes that can get you points.
Listen. I'm not saying I'm not one of these people who's jumped off the bandwagon, but you know the people who are out there with the torches and the pitchforks. You lose to Louisiana Tech, you got issues with a capital I.
413 yards per game, La Tech averages. Now, again, it's not against the greatest competition, and Mississippi State put 57 points on the board against them. So
SEC teams are not supposed to lose at home to Conference USA teams.
No, exactly. Am I saying they're going to lose? No, I'm saying I'm counting this as a W for South Carolina.
Okay.
But they can't go out and lollygag. I mean, they lollygagged against Kentucky, and it cost them. They've got to come out and play this like it's an SEC team, like the season hinges on this game, because 3-1, I think even though you lost to Kentucky, I think the fan base would see 3-1 and go, okay, that's all right for the first 4 games, and now go out and do something special at Texas A&M.
Calling what happened against Kentucky lollygagging is an insult to lollygaggers.
Well, it is what it is. I mean, they lost to a team for the 4th year in a row that they should have been completely focused on and revved up to play. The fans certainly were, and I give the fans a lot of credit, though. You were there,
Yeah.
and I'm watching on television the replay, and man, after halftime, there were a lot of empty seats. Now maybe they went and stood in the turnstiles and on the ramps and all that kind of stuff.
Well, they probably needed to go to. They probably needed to go to the bathroom.
Well,
because of the low water pressure.
I'm telling you, they probably couldn't hold it any longer.
It's got to go somewhere.
I'm going to be gone the next 2 nights. You'll be in the very capable hands. You'll be here by yourself, you and Brian.
We'll
try not to kill the show, will you?
We will shoulder ourselves on.
I'd like to come back Friday and still have a show to run.
I'll protect the license. Don't worry.
You guys have a great rest of the week until Friday. Have a great night. Thank you, Brian, and we'll see you.